So, if you are around my age range, you probably grew up watching Will Smith, whether it was The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, from his movies to his music or whatever the case may be. So, and even if you didn't grow up watching him, you've heard of Will Smith. He is, really huge, big name, obviously, in Hollywood. And he's married to Jada Pinkett Smith, father, of course, to Willow Smith and Jaden Smith. So recently, there's been a lot of news around Will Smith in terms of his book coming out. There's a lot of just juicy details that are being revealed in his memoir. And so what got me thinking, and of course, Jada has also been talking about their marriage. Jada and Will have faced a lot of over the years, a lot of rumors about their marriage and a lot of speculation, and there's been a lot going on in that marriage, and as you can tell if you pay attention to the media. But anyway, point being, what got me thinking about this is, why is this like such a huge story? What's going on in Will's life? Why is he telling so much? And everyone's asking this. I'm gonna look at his transits in a minute, but just to first look at his chart. And again, this is not me at all. I didn't have time to prep this, right? So this is not how I would do a reading for a client. This is a quick read. But one thing that stood out is, I know recently, and I've heard this before about him growing up in a volatile household where like his father abused his mother. And sometimes you can see that with Mars. Mars being in the fourth house can sometimes mean a person who's grown up with conflict. Now, luckily for Will, he has not inherited that trait. Sometimes some people grow up in abusive homes and then they end up having these abusive tendencies in themselves. I do think that his memoir seems to reveal that there are some insecurities that he's had, perhaps, and things that he probably overthinks a lot about. And I think that is also due to this need to be perfect, and not just because of the Libra angle, right? This Libra image. And I don't think that with Libra, one, we know with Will, and like especially in his prime, was like one of Hollywood's heartthrobs, just kind of like really pleasant looking. Libra men, especially Libra women, tend to, and again, this is not an affront to anyone else, because I do think there are other signs as well that have this kind of look to them. But Libra tends to have a very polished look, a very clean look, and also they like their reputation to look clean as well, even if that means they have to play like they're the nice guy, nice girl if they're not. So one, there's the Libra angle there, and then also he's a Virgo stellium. He has 4 planets in Virgo, 3 that are actually conjunct. So this need to push himself to be the best. His conjunct is in his 5th house, right? The 3 planets being there push his success. The 5th house, sometimes when I'm looking for somebody who's famous, I'm looking at, of course, a lot of times people say, well, just look at the 10th house. Well, if someone doesn't have anything in the 10th house, the first thing I'm looking at, honestly, before I even look at the 10th house, is 5th house. How confident are you to be an entertainer, to put yourself out there, to put your family out there, to have to work under a lot of pressure, in the industry, in terms of filming a movie, having one movie he had to lose a lot of weight, one movie he had to gain weight. Like, that's a lot on someone. I look at the 5th house because we can see someone's talents through the 5th house, and his son being in the 5th house is definitely an indication there. Now, what's interesting about Will is I do think I've seen him kind of actualize his North Node. Though he is clearly been in a marriage for a very long time, Moon and Scorpio, him and Jada are like, we're not getting divorced, right? I think it was like a year or 2 years ago or something, when they had that roundtable discussion on her show around the time where like there was a lot of news about her and August Alsina. They were on the show and they said like bad marriage for life or something like that. But the Moon and Scorpio person, Beyonce also has a Moon Scorpio. They find it very hard to let go of something. So that's the thing we have to understand about order energy, right? And again, his Juno was also in Scorpio, okay? That we have to understand that when someone makes a decision as a Scorpio Moon, Scorpio Sun, Scorpio Mercury even, there's a clinging to it. We believe, okay, Scorpio, they're going to sting you. They're big and bad. It's like, at the end of the day, Scorpio really only tends to do those things if they feel hurt. So we always have to remember that Scorpio is a water sign, and understand behind that is this need to not feel like they're losing power. So for him, a bad marriage looks bad on him. He felt very hurt by his first marriage ending. And then when I see a man who especially has Venus in Libra or Sun in Libra, or a woman, but we're talking about a man, there does tend to be this pronounced need to be in a partnership, to be in a relationship, right? Not only that, he also has Capricorn on the cusp of the 8th house. So we can sometimes see that more of a serious need or serious want within a union. He has a lot of positive aspects to Venus, but he does have Venus opposing Saturn. Okay, there have been difficulties within his marriage. So this is what I'm talking about with astrology. You have to look deep. Now, just because someone gets married, just because you see someone in a relationship, does not mean it's perfect. Venus opposing Saturn does represent this kind of hardship that he's faced. And again, his Saturn being in the 12th house, Will has dealt with some depression probably. And he actually revealed at one point in time he was suicidal. So again, a lot of this is coming out in his new book. But that Saturn, especially in retrograde, I feel like with Will, no matter how successful he is, he likely always felt this need to push himself more and to have more and to be more successful. And that can weigh on a person for a very long time. Not only that, because Chiron and Aries in retrograde. So for him, whatever issues underlying in Will have likely been under the surface. Now, what do we see? We see the Gemini. We see the charismatic Libra of him. We see him being jovial. We see him. And I think with also having his black moon in the 1st house, there is probably a shadow side to Will. Feeling like he's had to repress certain things that he thinks because of his image, right? Having to repress some things he really wanted to do with that Mars being square, the ascendant. And also with the 5th house, having so much energy, always feeling like he has to be someone who is joyful. Sun, trying the ascendant. That can be great for personability. People like you. He's a very likable guy. He's very likable, right? So it is important to understand the different layers. He has a lot of complexity within the chart, but what we've always seen is the funny, goofy, silly type of Will, and of course he's been more serious with his projects. The 6th house, he takes his work very seriously. He takes his health very seriously. I would definitely call this a stellium. So what we'll notice here is there are obviously placements that are not planets, Ceres, Juno, Vertex, Pallas, those are not planetary. But he has Mercury, Venus, the Moon, and Neptune in the 6th house. I do also think this is where he gets some of that creative bug from, because remember he did have that, some of the movies he's done where there's like a supernatural or like a technology kind of theme to it. iRobot. What was the other one? There was the other one he did where it was like kind of futuristic as well. Then we also had, of course, Men in Black. You also had him in, I forgot, there was a Netflix movie he did. Then there was the other one, Hancock, with the superheroes, and it had an interesting theme to it. So what you see here with Neptune, especially in the 6th house, I do think, remember Neptune, having to work overdrive in the 6th house, across from the house it rules at the 12th house, can definitely represent that. That kind of idealistic nature, but being able to apply it to his work. He wants his projects to speak and make a statement and be able to say something. But also he doesn't tend to like to do film that is too explicit, promiscuous, raunchy in nature. You tend to see him in things that you can watch with the family, right? And that, again, that's that Venus and Libra as well. That's that Mercury and Libra. It's like, I want to be marketable to everybody. I want to be liked by everybody. So this is where we see someone who's very successful, very famous, but also Will has started to share some of his insecurities, share some of the ways in which he feels that he hasn't measured up in certain ways. Additionally, the fact that he even has Taurus intercepted. Now, not everybody has interceptions in your chart. You would have to use Placidus to see if you have an interception, but even him having the Taurus intercepted in the 12th house, like, not understanding his true value all the way, feeling lost, feeling at some point probably that he's like, and I haven't read the book yet, I've just heard some tidbits, but I do probably want to read it. Going through all these experiences in life and getting, fame and having fame at a young age and all these other things, but at the same time, having to really learn what the meaning and value of life is. I do think that you tend to see Will and Jada kind of have a very philosophical look on different things. Remember, he also was in Scientology. The fact that his North Node is in the 11th house does not surprise me. Regardless of your opinion on Scientology, whether you're still in it or not, the North Node being in the 11th house, he is here to explore and understand how he connects to a community. So him being a part of that is a way in which he was trying to break the mold. Remember, break free from what is expected with Aries, especially if you come from a household where there are more traditional leanings or things of that nature. So in that regard, that is something to consider. With his South Node being conjunct the Sun, there are some karmic levels of him having to break free from being codependent. And I think one part of this memoir is that as well, speaking, being heard, being seen, but also just the way in which he views relationships. I remember a while back he said, well, we are not responsible for one another's happiness, even if we're in a marriage. And a lot of people didn't understand that. But I think what he was trying to say is that, you know, no matter what somebody does, if you're not happy, it's not going to be authentic. And so that's the way they kind of roll with their marriage. Now I'm about to look at his transits in a minute. Of course, he has 3 children. Usually when I see someone with the 5th house that's stacked, there are multiple children within, you know, the dynamic. You know, I do think that he thought very strategically about what he was going to be able to give to his children. I'm sensing here and seeing this legacy, right? Wanting to leave a legacy for them. Like, I want them to have something but also I want them to work for what they have as well. He has Virgo on the cusp of the 5th house, and he has Pluto and Jupiter in the 5th house, Uranus in the 5th house. So a unique way in which he's raised his children. We've seen that they didn't go to traditional school in any way. Like, I know a lot of times rich people will have their children in like a private school. I think they were in school to a certain age, and then he let them not be in school and said, well, go ahead, you know, if you want to explore the world, or you want to, you know, leave school and get educated a different way, go ahead. But what I also would say is the Virgo here, because he does want them to work for what they have. He doesn't just give them money. As you see, his oldest son is not in the limelight as much as, or in the industry like Will and Jaden are, but you'll see that, you know, they worked with him. Jaden has starred in, I think, is it 2 movies with his father? So it's like a unique way of like, I want legacy. Like, I feel like for some reason, again, my readings are intuitive as well. So I know how to interpret everything, but sometimes I get like, just intuitive thoughts about the chart as well. Like, what pops out to me is the word legacy. Him wanting a legacy, right? But at the same time, Virgo energy in his 5th house, like, I have it to, it's like, Will is like, I have this to give to you, but I need you to work for it as well. You need to take my money and use it in a smart way, right? Mars in 4th, liking to have some level of, I wouldn't say control within but yeah, some control within the family dynamic, within the household. I don't feel like he's controlling, but there is probably some level where he likes to feel like there's some level of him being able to make the decisions. He might view himself as, I'm the thinker of this, even though Jada Jada has a very deep way of thinking. You know, if you've heard her speak, or you've seen some of her talk show, like, she likes to talk a lot about life and her experiences and just the bigger meaning. So, you know, they have that in common, but I also feel like anytime someone has Mars in the 4th house, they tend to be the decision maker, or they tend to be some sort of a dominant force within the home in some regard. Okay. Sometimes the Moon and Scorpio person has faced a lot of difficulty or a lot of trauma, or they've experienced something that is really hard for them to deal with. And it seems like when you hear Will talk about his background and his upbringing, him seeing his mom be abused is really weighed on him. And him seeing his parents' marriage dissolve, I think, is, you know, definitely one of these ways in which he doesn't want his marriage to dissolve. Like, he feels like he has to make it work because he's seen it not work, is probably the angle. So I'm going to pause this right now and then jump into his actual transit reading. So again, this is off the cuff. This is not in any way planned out. I don't even have any notes for this, but this is Will's current chart. And so the biggest thing that stood out to me was him having an Aquarius midheaven and then saying, wait a minute, Jupiter's in Aquarius, Saturn's in Aquarius. He's coming back into the news, and it's not like he's ever went away, but these stories are very they're more revealing than we've ever heard before. He talks about being suicidal. He talks about falling in love on the set. He talks about being insecure about Jada's friendship with Tupac. He talks about his memories and just his family, and he talks about things that we've heard of bits and pieces of, but now it's all put together. And I said, he's in the, like, his story is being told. I'm like, what is that? So we also know that Jupiter is this level of experience, right? Jupiter right now. Now, is this a direct conjunct? Well, Jupiter at the 23rd degree and his ascendant at the 14th degree, they're pretty far apart. Like, they're separating, right? But he does have this Saturn conjunct the Aquarius midheaven in the ninth house. You're telling your truth. You're speaking. You're doing what is necessary to share your voice. And so I thought that was really interesting in terms of just seeing that that's the kind of energy with Saturn and Aquarius. It's almost like he's saying, I have to do this in order to really tell my story. Pluto is in the ninth house as well, but as we can see, that has no real connection to Saturn. And Saturn is too far apart to make an actual, connection to Pluto. But what we could definitely see here is like Pluto and Capricorn. It's like this has been something in the works, in the making. He did not just wake up one day and say, I'm writing a book. I feel like he's been thinking through this and really internalizing his experiences and thinking through them for a long time in order to make some sense of it. And be able to really just share his experiences. And also, I'm not going to go through this whole transit chart because I only want to really talk about what's significant about what I'm noticing about what's going on right now. But also here, the 10th house is we see you, right? The 10th house represents typically career, success, and all those different things. But Jupiter Aquarius, again, Jupiter is more of the storyteller. Jupiter is, here's what I've experienced. Here's what I've seen. I don't think it's a tell-all just to get attention. I think it's a tell-all to connect to people. I think that some people are going to receive his book as, wow, I can relate to that. Or if I had that happen too, or wow, I never would have thought about this, that Will dealt with this. Because Aquarius does deal with information that's kind of not expected. Okay. And though anyone can have experiences with having suicidal thoughts, people tend to think that celebrities have it made and that they don't go through some of the issues that, the regular person goes through. So for him to reveal that is a big deal. And it might help other people who have thought about it see, well, wait, what did Will do to overcome those feelings? And also the North Node being in Gemini in his 12th house. This is a healing project for him. This is therapeutic. This is not for attention. Okay, my expertise with this and just seeing what energies are showing up right now at this time, this is not. Now, is the timing good because of the Aquarius energy he has? Remember, the Aquarius midheaven is our public image, and when we release something, it doesn't always have to be in a conjunction with our sun sign. Sometimes we can release something and make some type of conjunct or trine to our midheaven, right? And as we can see, though, the 1 and the 14 are not close together, but these are air signs. We know that Gemini and Aquarius trine. And so that is something I think is also important for us to note, is that this North Node in Gemini, the talking, the speaking, but in his way, it's more about releasing information. And it's a way to heal himself. And if somebody happens to understand him better, relate to him better, so be it. But I do think this is more so like him feeling, I need to get this off my chest in a way to help me make sense of what I've experienced. So that is what I think is really the underlying energy behind this recent book release and some of the news around it.